I want to welcome everybody today. My name is Kari, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I am the director of the Adult and Long-Term Care Services Division for the County of Santa Cruz. So one of the programs that we run is our Adult Protective Services program. And for those of you who haven't heard about it, Adult Protective Services, or APS, is a program that serves seniors age 65 and older and dependent adults, and we investigate allegations of abuse and neglect in this population. Elder abuse is on the rise. We get about 50 or 60 referrals per month, and 30% of those allegations are allegations of elder financial abuse. So this is a growing concern, not only in Santa Cruz, but state and nationwide. Seniors are particularly vulnerable to this type of crime because some people have reached a point of financial security and their assets become a target at that point. Also, as elders become more isolated, the dependence increase on just a select few to provide for their emotional and physical care needs. The results of elder financial abuse are extremely devastating. Often seniors are not in a position to recoup the losses, and a lot of times elders are really ashamed to report that something like this has happened to them. A lot of people become depressed or even die as an indirect result of these crimes. So although on the rise, these types of crimes continue to be under-recognized, under-reported, and under-prosecuted. So we feel that the best way to address this serious problem is through prevention. And for us, that really means education. And what we're here to do today is to really focus on giving you some tips, what to look out for in preventing these types of crimes from occurring. So what we're going to focus on for the next hour and a half or so is the successful ways that you can hire and bring somebody into your home. So certainly the point of today is not to frighten or scare anybody. There is certainly a way to successfully hire and manage somebody in your home, and we're here to give you some tips on how to do that. We're very fortunate to have a panel of experts with us, and they'll talk to you about the various aspects of hiring a caregiver. At this time, it's my great pleasure to introduce our District Attorney, Bob Lee. So Bob Lee is a strong champion for the cause of elder abuse prevention. He serves on our FAST team, which is our Financial Abuse Specialist team. And he and his staff are really strong advocates and partners of Adult Protective Services and local law enforcement. So at this time, I'll give you Bob Lee.
We have about an hour and a half today, so I want to be very quick because I want to get to the purpose of this particular how to hire and manage a safe and effective caregiver. So I want to have the experts come forward. But the reason I'm here basically is, I don't usually use props, but this woman right here is my 94-year-old mom who lives in Capitola. And she's going to have her 94th birthday on December 14th. About 8 years ago, my family, because of a heart attack that my dad had to face the same issue that you're facing and you're here today. We had to provide care. My mom has got moderate to severe dementia, moderate Alzheimer's too. And so we had to face those issues about, how do we care for the person that used to care for us. And so that's why I'm proud that you're all here. I'm proud that Kari and others, many others, Senior Services Network, the Senior Council, the County of Santa Cruz, the Health Project Center, all have come together, or sponsors, to put on this particular information for us. I mean, I wish me and my brothers had it 8 years ago. So with that, I want to introduce our panelists that are here. And we'll start from left to right. This is Dixie Mitchell-Chow from Lifespan, a for-profit organization. Lifespan has been around for 30 years. She's the head of the operations from Lifespan since 2003. She's also a UC Berkeley graduate. And Lifespan is dedicated in working with the elderly, people that need health, financial, and social services in need of that assistance. So we welcome Ms. Clark. In the middle, we have Kendra Webster. Ms. Webster works for the Health Project Center. That is a non-profit. It leads to its existence to basically deal with human health and human needs for individuals, families, the community, and the Central Coast. She got her master's in social work from the University of Michigan. She got her
My school.
her school. Former Wolverine. Well, this will make you mad. She got her undergraduate work from Michigan State in English. She's been one of the operating directors of the Human Services Multi-Purpose Senior Services Program. So she's got a lot of expertise in this area, and Ms. Mitchell-Chow will tell you about how to work with the agency. She's going to talk to you about how to work with an independent caregiver. Now, we expect her to be here. She's not here right now, but over to the far left in the empty chair, we have Karina Aragon. And Ms. Aragon is a Senior Human Services Manager. She works for IHSS, which is In-Home Support Services. And of course, we all know what they're about. They work for the county. Their job is to work with the elderly, the disabled, the blind, to keep people in the home. And so she's going to come here and tell you, and she's also got her master's in public policy. She's been involved with IHSS for 9 years. And she's going to talk about how to work with a caregiver in the context of working with IHSS. And finally, to my right, is Assistant District Attorney Bill Atkinson. He works for the Santa Cruz County District Attorney's Office. He's been an attorney for so long, I don't even know when he went to law school, or undergrad. Yeah. He's worked for the DA's office for 10 years. He's a specialist in elder abuse. He's a member of the FAST team, which is a financial abuse specialist team. And he's here to tell you about, and to work with you, to tell you about how to prevent fraud. And if you do find yourself to be a victim, what do you do? So these are a panel of experts. Please take notes. There'll be a question and answer at the very end. And hopefully we can give you some hints, suggestions, context, information that you can use in your own life. So I thank you for being here. Your presence alone is very important to our community because it shows you that you care about someone that you want to give care to. So thank you again, and we'll turn it over to our panel.
So what I am going to talk about is if you decide to go with a home care agency to hire a caregiver, what the pros and cons are of hiring an agency to manage it for you. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about is I think that there's sometimes confusion about what's a home health agency and what's a home care agency. And basically the difference between the two is a home health agency is basically one that can do skilled nursing in the home. And so you may be familiar with Dominican Home Health or Visiting Nurses Association. Those are both examples of local home health agencies. And so if someone goes to Dominican Hospital, let's say, and they have surgery, and then they're coming home and the hospital, before they release them, they think, oh, they still have a wound that needs care or some other kind of skilled nursing, they will arrange for Dominican Home Health to provide either nurses or caregivers in the home. And when that happens, Medicare pays for that. What we're really talking about, though, are home care agencies, and those are pretty much mostly privately owned, and Medicare does not pay for home care services in the home. Very often what happens, though, is after a skilled agency like Dominican Home Health follows somebody home, when they no longer need skilled care, very often they call a home care agency, and then a home care agency starts sending people into the home. And I thought I would go a little bit into with a home care agency, there's basically 3 different ways of getting the home care paid for. If someone was smart enough at a younger age to buy long-term care insurance, when they need help in the home, their long-term care insurance will then pay for them to hire a home care aide to come in. And what you need to have help with in order to have that long-term care insurance policy kick in is either supervision for cognitive impairment, so something like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, something like that, or you would need help with what they call activities of daily living. And those are, you know, pretty much the basic things that that someone does hire a home care aide for. The Veterans Administration also pays for in-home care for veterans, and both Lifespan and Visiting Angels provide home care aides to veterans here in Santa Cruz County. And it's similar to, they have a similar criteria for care. You either need help with bathing or getting dressed, things like that, or they also provide respite for the spouse. If it's a veteran, say, who can't be left alone, and they may provide for a home care aide to come in and, you know, take care of the spouse while the husband and wife go shopping, something like that. But I would say in most cases it's the client or their family that pays for private home care. Now, the main advantage of not working with a home care agency, in other words, what Karina would have told you before me, is that if you hire a home care aide privately, you're almost always going to be paying less money. You can, here in Santa Cruz County, you can usually hire a home care aide privately for about $15 an hour, whereas if you go through a home care agency, it's probably going to cost somewhere between $20 and $25 an hour. So I'd like to just get that, you know, it is going to be cheaper if you hire someone privately. But the reason that some people choose to work with a home care agency is the agency actually employs the home care aides. So we interview them, we check their references, and we do a criminal background check. If somebody has, let's say, a drunk driving conviction from 15 years ago and then nothing else on their record, and they have the right experience and skills, we would probably go ahead and hire them. If they had a theft conviction anywhere on their record, we wouldn't touch them, you know, with a 10-foot pole, because any home care agency is going to take the responsibility of sending people into elders' homes very seriously. Now, the other thing is a home care agency handles all the payroll. So in other words, we have about 120 home care aides. They're all our employees. We pay federal and state taxes, Social Security taxes, all that. If you hire somebody privately, you do have to do that yourself. And then, of course, a home care agency would be required to have both workers' compensation insurance, which pays for medical care and wage replacement if a home care aide gets hurt on the job. And we also have liability insurance. You know, we once had a home care aide drive their car into the corner of someone's mobile home, and so our liability insurance, you know, paid to have that, the mobile home fixed. A couple of other points. When you use a home care agency, if your regular caregiver goes on vacation or they're sick, the agency will send somebody else out. If you're hiring somebody privately and they're out sick, you're pretty much scrambling to, usually to find a family member or a friend or a neighbor. And most agencies also have access to nurses on a 24-hour basis, so that if the caregiver has questions about the client's medication, for instance, they would be able to get a hold of a nurse to get that answer. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about who can benefit from home care. The way we sell it to people is that it really is the way to remain independent in your home. That I think a lot of elderly people have resistance to home care because they don't like the idea of a stranger in their home. But if you sort of flip that around and realize that, having someone in to provide a little care is how you're going to be able to stay in your home longer. Certainly somebody with dementia, as soon as it becomes a safety issue, they really need to have some type of home care. And we do have some seniors who don't have a lot of family or friends, left in the area. And so, sometimes their family lives on the East Coast and they just think, gosh, I wish there was somebody who would come in and take my mother out to lunch, maybe take her down to the wharf for a little walk around, that kind of thing. And then we've already talked about that sometimes you have one spouse who's taking care of another spouse, and boy, when you're elderly, it's much harder to do that, that kind of care that is so, you just can't let up on it. And so sometimes people hire either a private caregiver or a home care agency just to give the spouse a little bit of a break. I think there also is there's some question about what kinds of things home care aides can do. And it isn't just that, the personal care, I think, is pretty obvious, but also, those things that help with life activities, planning meals and going shopping, doctor's visits, and then all kinds of housekeeping, pet care, things like washing the dishes, making beds, changing the bed linens, anything like that. The final thing I'd like to talk about is just if you were going to use a home care agency to hire a caregiver, this is pretty much how you get started. You pick a home care agency, and I have a handout here that lists about 10 private home care agencies here in Santa Cruz County. The agency then sends a nurse to your home and goes over the contract, figures out what kind of a schedule you need, what exactly, on that whole list of things that an aide could do, what are the things that you want them to do, and then they usually get a copy of your med list. And then what the home care agency tries to do is they take input from you on what kind of a home care aide you're looking for. Older, younger, talkative, not talkative, good housekeeper, good cook, different things like that. And my best advice when you're working with a home care agency is remember that they have a wide range of caregivers. So if they send out a home care aide and it's not a good fit for whatever reason, and maybe it's just you don't like their personality, you need to call up the home care agency and say that wasn't a good fit. Here's why it wasn't a good fit. Please send me somebody new. I would like to mention that the Alzheimer's Association has also brought a lot of material here for you. It has advice on finding a caregiver if your loved one has dementia, what to look out for. And also, if you're finding that your loved one has resistance to care, there's some material here on how to successfully overcome that resistance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kendra Webster. I work with the Health Project Center. I work with two programs that we have. One is called the Del Mar Caregiver Resource Center. It's a program that serves family caregivers who are caring for a loved one with any kind of a neurological impairment. So someone who's got dementia, someone who's had a stroke, someone who's had Parkinson's disease, things like that. And then I also work for another program that's called the Multi-Purpose Senior Services Program, or MSSP for short, because that's a mouthful. And we also work with families who are lower income to help them keep their loved ones safe at home independently for as long as possible. So today I'm going to talk with you about hiring a private caregiver. And Dixie has touched on some of the things that I'm going to touch on, but it's really important just to kind of take notes and to think about this. This is if you don't want to go through a home care agency and you'd like to hire someone privately, either a family member, someone that you know from a spiritual community, someone that you've been referred to from a friend of yours, that kind of thing. So there's some pros and cons of hiring privately, as Dixie mentioned. Some of the pros: you can develop a trusting relationship with just one person. Sometimes when you go with an agency, they'll send a couple different people, and it can be harder to have a bond with them. But if you hire privately, then you can really form a bond with that person and get to know them, and your loved one can get to know them and really develop that kind of trust with them. As Dixie mentioned, usually this option is less expensive. And then you have more than one choice over who you employ and who comes to your home. The cons: it can be hard to find a substitute if the person is sick or quits unexpectedly. So unlike a home care agency where you could just call up and say, you know, so-and-so is sick, I need somebody else to come. If you hired privately, one of the cons is that you won't have access to someone else right away unless a family member or someone that you know can step up. You do have to take all responsibilities for being the employer of that person that you hire. And I'm going to go into that a little bit in more detail. But all of the things that you heard Dixie say that an agency does, you would have to do as a private employer of that individual. And that person may not have health insurance or be covered by Medi-Cal, so if they get sick, there could be a real problem there. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is called a needs assessment. And this is just something that you and your family would want to sit down and have a frank conversation about when you're talking about hiring for in-home care. Would you like to hire privately or hire an agency? So you've kind of heard now the pros and cons of both of those. You want to look at that as a family and see what you can afford and what makes the most sense for you. You would evaluate the resources you have and a need to hire an in-home care worker. You know, what kinds of things are you going to have that person do? What things are family members already doing? That kind of thing. So you're going to really sit down and evaluate that. What type of help is needed? Is it personal care? Is it household care? Is it health care? Is it emotional? And there's a form that you can get, and I'll list that later in the resources, to really do an in-depth needs assessment on what it is your family needs. And then finally evaluate the values and preferences of the person who's receiving the care. So you really want to think about if this is your mom or this is your spouse, what are their preferences and what do they want? So that's all part of the needs assessment that you're going to want to do. And in making these choices, we're going to talk about how much you can spend on care. As Dixie mentioned, it's a lot cheaper to hire privately. Who's going to act as the employer? It's going to be really important when you hire privately that one person, either yourself or your brother or whoever it is going to be that employer of that person, so that there's a clear relationship and a clear definition and boundary of who that employer is going to be. And then personal choices like when and how often a bath is given. Would bathing be better with a male or a female? Do you want a male or female caregiver coming in? Will exercise be part of the caregiving? Will you want that person to go out for a walk? Does your loved one need assistance when going out for a walk? That kind of thing. And does the care receiver, your loved one, respond well to other people or strangers? How are they going to respond? How are they going to develop that relationship with that person coming in? That kind of thing. So you're developing an employee-employer relationship, but they're developing kind of a personal relationship between the person who's receiving care and the person who's giving care. So once you have that conversation with your family, it's going to be really important to write up a job description. You're going to include what kind of tasks the person will have. You're going to include the kind of background you want them to have. And that, can get pretty specific. Does your loved one need lifts or transfers? Do they need help bathing? Do they need help with cooking? That kind of thing. So what kinds of background do you want that person to have? Have they bathed an elderly person before? Have they transferred? Do they know how to use the equipment? That kind of thing. Do they have to lift or operate equipment? Do they have any experience in caregiving? The hours you'd like them to work, really important one. What language would you like them to speak? And will they need a car? Will they be transporting your loved one to trips or to the doctor? Will they be escorting them to doctor's appointments? That kind of thing. Once you've written that job description, it's going to be really important to advertise for the job. That can be pretty difficult to do. But here's some resources for you, and I did check all of these phone numbers, so all of this information is current. There's Craigslist, popular one on the internet. Cabrillo College at 479-6413. UCSC at 459-4420. The County Employment and Training Services at 464-6286. The Santa Cruz Sentinel, 426-8000, and the Register Pajaronian at 761-7301. These are all really good places. In addition to that, I've got some web resources. These are internet sites that my colleagues have used when working with caregivers, and they've had good success with them. www.care.com, sittercity.com. That's a kind of a mixed site of people looking for babysitters, but people also looking for caregivers and that kind of thing. And you can also list your experience on there if you've had a good experience or bad experience and that kind of thing. And then the caring space. If you identified that perfect person, you're going to do some hiring training and hopefully not too much terminating. You're going to interview at least 3 or 4 applicants. I always say to people, at least get 3 people lined up that you think will be good, so you feel like you have a choice and your loved one feels like you have a choice. You're going to create a job contract that clarifies the name of the employer. So again, in your family, who is the employer going to be? The employee, their wages, their hours. Are you going to give them holiday pay and different times on holidays? When and how payment will be made? What their duties are going to be, so you're going to go back to that job description that you created. Unacceptable behavior and reasons for termination. You're going to want to discuss that up front so that that relationship is really clear up front, and reasons for termination would be really clear up front. An example would be if that person is going to be sick or they're going to be late, your expectation is that they call. That's a really big one, just not show up. You're going to decide how training will be provided, so if there is equipment that you're using, or there are certain ways that you do things at your house that you want to make sure that someone does, you're going to provide training.